Well, let's take a look at number one. As you know, I'm sure everyone knows that they
Yeah.
saw the headline of this video. You have AOC at number one. I saw this. Obviously, I was very excited. I was also like, damn, that is a bold fucking prediction, bro. That
Yeah.
is a bold
Not a
prediction. And
prediction. Let's not. It's a analysis.
analysis,
I'm
sure.
scared of predictions now. We
Obviously,
don't
this
do
changed. This
predictions
changed. I
anymore.
know this isn't the final version of her
Yeah,
list
yeah.
or whatever, but still, it's a bold thing to say. And you know,
Mhm.
I find it interesting too because it does feel like some people kind of thought Tim Walz might emerge to fill the progressive
Yeah,
role, but it really does seem like it's going to be AOC. If there's going to be like an heir to Bernie that runs
yeah,
this next election, I do feel like it's going to be AOC. I'm a little bit concerned about how that's going to go.
yeah.
I have my worries, but why did you put her at number one?
Yeah, well, this is like part of a long process for me, and if like in my latest piece, it's easily the biggest thing that like I've changed my mind about. Because when I was like writing after the election, like trying like because I was thinking the left is in this like kind of like good position, like potentially good position, and like while centrists kept on like kind of like just completely fucking blowing it, talking about how like this is the fault of the ACLU and labor unions, and like they've completely choked like their what was supposed to, what would have could have been a very good position for them. I think that at the start of the year, like there was a significant shift compared to 2017, with Democrats saying they wanted the party to take an either more centrist direction or to just stay the same. While other polling, like since then, has shown that like the people who want the party to take a more progressive direction has increased dramatically. Like people are not happy with the center. But at the same time, I was really worried about this opportunity being squandered because, like, Bernie is 83 years old. For as popular as he might be, he's never going to be able to run again. He's not running for president at the age of fucking 87. Um,
Hey, don't rain on my parade, man. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe
Brought the house down. No, I
he
agree.
seems pretty energetic. I mean, that's why we have a vice president, I guess. But like I had seen like congressional at the congressional level, you have these Democrats who just like are maybe in his mold, but haven't like performed particularly well, and that's the case with AOC. When AOC actually came out on the scene in 2018, her electoral performance that year was actually very strong. But after that, she had put in like in her district
Are you
in New
talking
York, kind of
general or against Crowley?
against in the general election in
General.
2018.
Okay.
She outperformed expectations. And but in 2020 she underran expectations. In 2022 she did that too. In 2024 she did about like a point worse than you would have expected somebody in her district to do, which isn't like horrific or like just like campaign killing, but it's not like ideal. Um so and the other issue with it is this is somebody who has near universal name recognition at the time, and she has negative favorables, negative national favorables, not as bad as other Democrats, but they're still negative. And that's a big contrast with Bernie, who is positive. So there's like about like 10% of this country that likes Bernie but doesn't like her. That's a big concern. And with this universal name recognition, she is polling very poorly in Democratic primary polling. She's like one of the most famous people in the country, and she's clocking like 5%, like around at the same level as these governors who aren't well known at all. So she seemed like just not viable. She just didn't really seem like, and she had been around for so long. It looked like she kind of represented this kind of politics that had been tried and hadn't worked. And I had her on my first list, but she wasn't particularly high. And I kind of said the only reason I include her here is because she represents this like the one person who could take this very big lane, but I feel like stuff will have to change for that to happen. And stuff has changed. The first thing is I underestimated the power of lying. I underestimated how quick she and Bernie would be to totally turn on a dime after Democrats lost. And this starts with the second that Kamala Harris loses, Bernie puts out this letter like saying, "Ha ha, I told you so. I knew that the working class would always abandon corporate Democrats. You should have listened to me. This proves I was right all along." And this is hackish and absurd because he had supported Biden all the way through, but he had no people might not really have been paying that much attention while he was supporting Biden. And he has this pre-existing reputation as the guy who opposed Biden and opposed Hillary. So he can come out and take back that kind of mantle, and people aren't really any the wiser for it. They just kind of code it in their pre-existing conception of who Bernie is. And then AOC isn't really doing the same thing. She does try to do her insider strategy to get the oversight chair, and that doesn't work out, and it's embarrassing. She loses to like a cancer patient. It sucks. Everybody's embarrassed, and then he dies. But then like what happens is like Bernie, like I remember reading like a quote from one of his staffers, like they were trying to see if any politician would do like a national tour. They saw nobody was doing it like in February, and he thought, well, they were like, okay, well, then I guess we can just do it. So he goes on this tour. He starts getting huge crowds like out of nowhere. Like the venues are being totally like filled up, overflowed. His videos on YouTube, I started noticing this really early on, were getting crazy engagement, like the Democratic Party official YouTube channel has been trying to put out like a daily series, and they've gotten like 500 views. Bernie's videos are getting regular like 1 million, 5 million, like in some cases like close to 10 million views. Like, and it's like not even about like his core issues. Like he'll make a video about like Trump yelling at Zelensky, and it'll like he's like the voice of the party in a lot of the minds of like liberals out there. So this is this unmatched platform of somebody who's broadly well liked and has a national profile that centrists don't really can compete with. And then he goes out, like he does the Fight Oligarchy tour, very clear, like shifting of messaging back to anti-corporate, anti-establishment, like populist kind of economics focused, left wing bread and butter stuff. And AOC comes along with him for this. They get even bigger crowds, and she starts going up in the polling a lot. She goes from 5% to like 10% to sometimes 15%, maybe 20%. She's not leading outright, but she's carving out a very clear lane. And this was really interesting to me because it's not like she's increasing name recognition. Everybody knows who she is, but by kind of shifting her brand from this kind of like gadfly lefty liberal like cheerleader of Biden who's on the sidelines and trying to work as a background character to taking back this old mantle of the anti-establishment. We hate like the congressional leadership. We hate like Clintonism kind of approach. It might have reminded people, like it might have like it made her more appealing. It might have moved her in that direction. What I think it mainly did was that it reframed the conversation around issues that prefer her. People aren't like considering how do we moderate to like appeal to these imagined swing voters who supposedly only like someone like Josh Shapiro. The question becomes, how do we fight against oligarchy? How do we fight against Elon Musk and Trump? And that invariably favors the left's approach because that's like the framing that they want. And this is enough by itself to be pretty, yeah.
Do you think she has the backbone to keep that up? Because that's my big concern, right?
Yeah,
obviously, Bernie Sanders had that 50 years of credentials of fighting the oligarchy, of saying, I'm an independent, I'm not a part of your party, right? I'm going to do this uniquely to stop the threat of fascism taking over our country. I believe I have a lot of power and sway with the electorate. I'm going to use it to play my cards the only way I really feel like I can. He can kind of get away with that, even though I massively disagreed with him and we were both vocally critical of the way he handled himself during the Biden administration at times. But he at least built up enough goodwill with the American people to be like, you know what, that's still Bernie, that's my guy, so that he could do what you correctly described as a hack maneuver and be like, no, I actually believe this the whole time. Haha, joke's on you. It was performance art, right? AOC has shown courage at times, right? She endorsed Bernie from the heart attack. She did the sit-in at Pelosi's office. There are times where I'm like, you have fucking balls. But the other times where she rolls over, I think are what's going to cost her, because the only way she can succeed is if she does have the firmest backbone possible moving forward.
Because we see that in like that data for progress polling, and I want to cite this at every possible opportunity. If they asked people specifically what they thought made Bernie Sanders different from the rest of the Democratic Party, and those of us in the media, those of us who talk about like the ideological fights for a living, we immediately see that, oh, he's a socialist, he's more left wing, he believes X, Y, and Z policy, and that's why he like people think he's different, that's why they like him. But almost like among the people who actually do like him, the vast majority say it's because of those character traits. It's because of his integrity. It's because of his authenticity. It's because of his consistency and the way he runs his campaign.
Why he always polled better than her.
Yeah, and like only like 6% of people who actually like him say it's because he's more left wing. The people who don't like him, on the other hand, say it's generally because he's more left wing. They code him as like an ideological extremist. Most of them are Republicans, so they just wouldn't like him in the first place. And AOC kind of represents, in my mind, this kind of idea of, and I talked about this earlier, but it is a big part of her story, of like just leftism representing leftism for the sake of leftism is going to be popular. Like just going more left wing on this issue, like following trends, doing like the kind of Diane Morales strategy of just representing like Instagram social justice language without like really like any kind of strategic thinking
and it's
behind
totally
it.
out of style now.
That's not popular, and that's that is the encouraging part of it. And you can kind of trade. This is what you get back to the leadership thing with AOC, and this might be a problem. Now that's out of style. People think it's cringe and like just doesn't work. Like now she's going in this direction and just like delivering results. Like we'll talk about the New York stuff and the primary stuff in a minute, like the polling. But like this is a little bit of kind of like a bit of trend chasing in the same way that she was chasing trends maybe with when she was like with the Sunrise Movement, or when Biden was in power, she got behind him. And now Bernie was the first one to actually do this. Like this is another example of Bernie kind of like maybe having better instincts on like this approach. He's the one who immediately just switches on a dime and does his rallies and acts like nothing's changed. AOC feels like this need to kind of like, she doesn't really have that like kind of hackish killer instinct, and only gets along with this kind of smarter approach when Bernie starts doing it. And that's all well and good. It's worked out well for her, and I'm glad that she's come in the right direction eventually. But like when you're like running a presidential campaign on your own, you're not going to have a Bernie Sanders to kind of make the earlier, tougher decisions for you. You're going to have to be the one.
Run as his VP because he has better name recognition and more respectability.
Yeah. Or he could be her VP or like campaign manager. But she will have to lead this kind of movement and make these kind of calls in her own right in a way that I haven't really seen her do in the same way that Bernie did. She hasn't, like, she obviously ran her race against big odds, and she's like made these like really influential endorsements, but and like has her own level of sway. But that kind of just like decisiveness that Bernie has had, for better or for worse, but often for better most of the time, it just doesn't really feel like we see that from her, and that's an issue. But
well,
yeah.
Do you mind if I cut in real quick? I wanted to ask about what role you think Israel and Zionism will play in 2028, because I was surprised by how ineffective the smear against Zoran as being anti-Semitic was. But I don't think, one thing that I worry about with AOC is that she does seem very afraid of backlash.
Yeah.
She seems afraid of being like smeared in the pages of the Washington Post or the New York Times. That kind of shit terrifies her. And I do really think she
really cared about. Bernie has sincere disdain for these newspapers. He expects them to go after her. He like go after him. Like he like was just like just anytime they would write like a negative story on him, and it's like, oh, he'd be like, oh, you're the corporate owned Washington Post, I don't care. With her,
exactly. He welcomed their hatred. Yeah. He's a little bit more afraid. So, do you think that when push comes to shove and they're up on the debate stage and every other candidate is talking about how I support Israel, and if you don't, then you're a fucking monster and an anti-Semite, do you think she's going to fold to the pressure, or do you think she's going to have a Zoran level, spine and say, fuck no, fuck you, I'm different than all of you, and that's why you should vote for me instead of all these people that are owned by a foreign government, which in my opinion is 100% what she should do.
Yeah, it's tough. It's because I mean we do have. I mean I'm a little kind of wary of this being like looking like a male and female thing. We're like, oh, these strong male candidates, Zoran and Bernie, they stick to their guns, while AOC is like a weak, and she doesn't.
That's why Jasmine Crockett's a great example to be like.
Yeah, or Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib didn't even fucking endorse Kamala. Like this. It seems like it's a bit of like. I don't want, like, I just kind of want to preempt maybe some criticism here, because like this isn't a gender thing. This is a specific kind of problem with her that's worth examining, in my opinion. Like, I gave a ton of praise to Rashida Tlaib. I think she was a lot better than Bernie in terms of being consistent on this stuff. And she had a better result than Bernie did. I credit that mostly because Bernie was up for re-election in Vermont last year, and he didn't do particularly well, like compared to his previous performances. He still won, but I think Kamala slightly outran him, and I think that's mostly just because he's like really old, and older candidates don't do as well as they do in the past. But like, yeah, I just want to say to any haters out there, this isn't a gender thing. This is like a consistent problem. It's tough because I think that like the one part of it is that we're kind of used to understanding this is a really tough issue where like you need to stand up on it on principle. But Israel at this point is a very effective wedge issue for the left, because Democratic based voters are not in favor of that country at all. They're very negative towards Israel. The issue like in that department is that they just don't really care about it either way. Like, people are more pro-Palestinian, but these foreign policy conflicts are not ranking high on anybody's list. To the extent that helps the left, and I think it did help the left a lot in the New York race, it's that when we focus on our economic issues and we focus on our like core campaign message, and we have these kind of pro-Palestine positions like on the side and get support from those organizations, that activates the center like nothing else. And they obsess on Israel because they're used to this being this kind of the campaign destroying like third rail. But the electorate doesn't care about it. So they perceive it as like the left candidate is focusing on this issue that like on these issues that I care about that matter to me, while the center is trying to do these scare tactics on an issue I don't even really agree with and don't consider relevant. So it's less that like, oh, I'm a pro-Palestine liberal and I want to vote for the more pro-Palestine candidate than it is like they think this question is insane, and it serves well to the left-wing candidate that they focus on the things that they care about. I mean, obviously, we would all hope that people would have principles and like support like the moral side and things, but people are issue salience is very important, and they're going to care about what they care about. And I think baiting the center into obsessing over Israel the way that Zorhan did is an outright benefit to the left, because it causes them to waste all of their campaign funds on like kind of just
ineffective attacks.
Yeah, ineffective attacks and solidifying a narrative that ultimately helps the left and like does a service to them.
That's what I'm really fucking hoping happens, man. I'm really hoping that AOC really, has the guts to run a strategy like that. Because again, I don't want anyone in the chat to think I'm a AOC hater. I think AOC has tremendous potential as a leader. I just want to see her live up to that and make the right decisions to get her into those positions. So I'm really hoping that she takes the right tact and that she really brings that sort of fire to the primary and that anti-establishment energy that I think you're right. The Zionism question kind of proves even if you don't really care about it, it can kind of prove your bona fides as an anti-establishment truth teller if you're willing to speak the truth on that.
It's somebody who cares about what people care about. I think the credit to her is that you mentioned Walz and the idea that Walz could be like a potential candidate for the left. And I had him higher than AOC in my first list. I was kind of open to that idea. I was still very wary of her and her past performance and like her instincts. And I thought like, well, Walz is this kind of like well-known guy. We all liked him. He was popular during the campaign while other candidates weren't. Like maybe this could be something. But Walz goes out very early. This is at the same time as the anti-oligarchy tour. And he tries doing his like speeches. He does like this whole viral bit where he calls Elon Musk a dipshit and says he likes seeing the Tesla stock crash. It's just red meat for the liberal base. It's like this, and it got him big headlines. But it didn't result in him going up in polling. Even though Kamala's numbers were going down at this point, he didn't see a boost from it. AOC, when she got out there and started framing things in the way that she wanted, she did see a boost. She did see movement. And I think that's a very big credit to her. It's like not even as much about what does happen, but like what doesn't happen. Walz didn't see a boost happen in the polls for him after he went out and got those headlines. AOC did, and I think that shows that there is a lot of potential there. Like people are interested in what she has to say. They're interested in what she represents. It's a bit of like a trick. Like it'll be an uphill battle. The idea of her like being elected president is still like feels a little fantastical. But like, I mean, I think that there is like a narrow way through here. I never thought that it was
smart for her to just take the Schumer Senate seat, though.
Yeah, probably personally, but the left, like to an extent, like in 20.
If she doesn't do it, who's going to represent the left? Then John
Shapiro
that's
the
and
thing.
John
like, we
Trump.
Need her. We can't like. I don't want to settle for a JB Pritzker or something. I want to have somebody who can actually represent our faction, and there's nobody else there unless you're running fucking Mark Ruffalo or like. I don't know, like or like some other like Bernie supporter. Like I thought about
Danny
union
DeVito.
leaders. Yeah, I thought about like union leaders running like earlier, but that it's not the same. It's not the same as like this internationally famous like kind of superstar representing your side for whatever fault she may have. And I'm trying to think about my final point, but yeah, this is it. The thing with Zoran that was really stunning to me, it wasn't just that he won and that he won by a lot. It was that he did the thing, and I think that you briefly showed the graph for this. He did the thing that AOC and Bernie and every other candidate on the left had promised for years that they could do, but none of them ever pulled it off. He actually transformed the electorate. He actually completely like remade the way like who was voting. He turned it from a race that had traditionally been dominated by older voters into one where younger voters were turning out at larger rates than any other age group. That is a tremendous change. It reminds me a lot of what Trump did, where he was able to do incredibly well with these like disengaged voters who traditionally don't vote in elections. Except it's even more than that, because Trump just did well with these disengaged voters who maybe hadn't voted before, only voted in 2020. Zoran completely remade the electorate, and it speaks to this kind of potential that like this explicit DSA left, like young, like non-white, exciting millennial candidate, like the potential for that, like wow, maybe like there is some crazy upside that we couldn't get with Bernie because of his age, that you definitely wouldn't get it with a Pritzker or Beshear. And it's maybe worth rolling the dice on the possibility that you could do this at a national level, because like there's no precedent for it. It came totally out of nowhere. It's like it just completely, he just found every holy grail of left-wing politics just overnight, and now we have to know what to make of that.
Yeah. I think that, before we let you go, I know we're nearing the end of the conversation, but I think that AOC, like at the very best, at the height of her potential, what she could represent is kind of the joining of Bernie's politics and the youthful celebrity kind of appeal of a Barack Obama.
Yes.
And that's, again, the best case scenario. Someone who it seems like wouldn't really be electable in any other situation. Obviously, Obama came after 8 long years of George Bush. AOC will come after, this Trump era. It'll be like, okay, people are ready for this. Normally, they might not consider someone in their 30s who's a, Latina congresswoman from New York City, but the time calls for it. We need to fight fire with fire. We need to have a bold candidate of our own to face down this dragon of fascism. So I do think that there is a potential perfect storm where it happens. Again, I don't know if she's going to be able to pull it off though, because that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and like the Schumer thing does loom very large. It's probably the best personal career decision for her. But I mean, at the end, like you may not ever get a chance like this ever in your career. Because like if a Democrat wins, like you could go on like 4, 8, 12 years before you have another open primary. And like Senate seats happen at once every 6 years. And we have a pretty shitty other Democrat in New York up in 2030. So like there's always a contingency plan.
Rapid fire real quick on the Senate, if you have a second. Any big flips that you're keeping an eye on? Maine, Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina. Do you think that the Dems pick up any of those seats?
I think North Carolina and Maine are definitely the lowest hanging fruit by far. They're probably going to get Cooper in North Carolina, and he was a very popular ex-governor, or like just left office as governor there. He'll be their best recruit they've had in a very long time, and like a Senate race for that seat. They've historically done well running ex-governors for Senate races in that state. Like Terry Sanford comes to mind. I don't know of any others in recent history, but there is like kind of a basis for it. Maine, I think people are really underrating. People are just kind of
even trading unpredicted, so people should check that out.
Yeah, well, yeah, Maine. The big story there is that Democrats, like all their recruits, are running for governor, and then none of them want to challenge Angus, not Angus King. He's the other senator. None of them want to challenge Susan Collins. I said Angus King because his son is running for governor. I didn't like totally blank on that. There was an association in my mind, but I think people are really underrating the odds of that. Even if Democrats can't get a good candidate, Collins' approval ratings are very low right now, like the lowest they've ever been. She did well in 2020, but that was before Dobbs. Maine is a lot bluer than people think or give it credit for. It was a close state in 2016, but I think it voted like I don't know, like 8 points to the left of the nation this year. Like it's old and white, and those are like demographics Democrats have done particularly well with since Dobbs and since Biden, even but they've collapsed everywhere else. And then you have the seats Democrats need to defend in Michigan and Georgia. Georgia, they got a huge break when Kemp didn't run. Michigan, there's a big contested primary there, but that state kind of leans bluish in off years. Like they did very well in 2022, maybe a bit trickier without an incumbent governor, but they should. They voted Maine voted actually slightly to the left of the nation in 2024. So like if Democrats are winning nationally, they'll probably win in Michigan. And then after that, it's a bit of a wasteland. You have the open seat in Ohio, but that'll be tricky to recruit for because whoever wins there is going to have to run again in 2028, and that's not what you'd really want to do. Like if you want to have a good next 4 years of your life. Texas.
Whatever happened to Vivek? Because he's still running for governor.
He's running for governor. Yeah, they cleared the field for him. He's going to be their marquee candidate. He actually got out the best out of really anybody in the Trump administration so far. He's going to probably that governor's race there could be interesting because he does not fit the profile of a strong candidate, but it's a pretty red state at this point. We'll see what happens. Iowa, Joni Ernst might retire. I don't know if that would. I can't really tell if that's good or not because she's not she didn't do super well in 2020. But we've been burned by that state before. I don't really want to talk about Iowa too much. Brings back bad memories. And then past that, there's Texas, which could be interesting because the polling has shown the guy who's going to challenge Cornyn there, Paxton, is polling horrifically in the general election. They were
aren't they running the same guy that what's his name that ran against Ted Cruz? Colin Allred, isn't he trying to?
He's running again, but he doesn't. It doesn't look like he'll be uncontested this time.
Oh,
there's this white pastor who went on Joe Rogan recently, who looks like he's going to jump in that race, and he's a huge YouTube star. James Tallarico or something. He's someone to keep an eye on. I think he could have a chance of beating out.
Oh shit, this guy was on PBD. This is the guy I was telling you about a few weeks ago who went on PBD and was like, that's how I found out that Patrick
David he currently is elected to the Texas House of Representatives.
Yeah, he is, and his whole thing is he's a Christian liberal.
Ugh,
interesting.
Yeah, and everybody
a look in the future. That's what we're going to be contending with at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we had Warnock did it. I mean, Warnock doesn't make. I mean, Warnock's a fucking reverend, and he doesn't make Christianity nearly as big of a part of his persona.
He was kind of a based pastor, though, right? Wasn't Warnock kind of?
Yeah, he was good. He's like part of like the Black Church. He met with like Fidel one time.
Yeah,
he was like one of those, like not like Jeremiah Wright, but he was like part of like kind of a radical tradition.
He was a pastor at the same church that Martin Luther King.
Yeah. He's still the pastor there. He never actually left that job, so he's a senator reverend at the same time.
Interesting.
Which I always thought
we could keep talking about all these candidates for so long. I would love to get you back on the show at some point.
If
you're interested in continuing the conversation.
For sure.
Do you have anything else to mention, Zach?
No, really appreciate the time today, man. It was a great conversation. Gavin and I love the horse race. We're big fans of riding. And, also, quick, what the hell does Ettingermentum mean?
It's a reference to a special election candidate in 2022 that convinced me that there wouldn't be a red wave that year, which was what made me get attention the first time. I was correct about that.
Gotcha.
Jeff Ettinger held a congressional seat in Minnesota to a close margin, and I thought that was like a part of my own origin story or lore. So
that is why you first popped off, because you nailed that prediction.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, really appreciate you stopping by. It was a fascinating conversation, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.